Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into the JMU Sports News Podcast. Before we get underway today, we just want to let you guys know that our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA playoffs, fights, and even next season's futures. And don't forget that the MLB is back as well. Who are you picking to win the World Series? BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started. Head to the website, use your mobile device, whichever one you prefer, and use our promo code BELIEVE. That's promo code BLEAV to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. And Jack, it's been a while.
It's been a long time. I think it's been over a month since the last time we had a podcast, and not a lot's happened. Normally we can talk softball and baseball, and I don't want to poo-poo their seasons, but they're not doing good. And we had been podcasting, I think, nearly every week since the start of COVID. So I think it was a worthy 1 month break there.
Yeah, it made sense, right? There's stuff going on in our lives. You got Easter, all these types of things that are happening. Some vacations. I know you're always having a good time. Big foodie and beverage man yourself.
What? No, all right.
King of the town.
I did go to Asheville last week.
Yeah, exactly. That's
so I guess it makes sense. But
so, yeah, I had done a few episodes back. I had done sort of the dreary doomsday, the spring's sad and nobody's good and everything's sad. So I think to have a month of me not talking about it has sort of brightened my spirits a little bit.
I also think this podcast, I'm really excited for this one because I think the break made people, not saying they wanted to hear our voice, but
I think they did.
Normally when we put out a thing on Twitter where we're like, any questions, please ask us, we get crickets. And this time we got 9 responses, and I think in total like 11 questions. So I'm really excited for where this podcast is going to take us. I think there's actual information we can dive into. The spring game's coming up. Apparently there's a 3-way quarterback battle, which is a load of poo-poo, if you ask me, because it's only one person. But there's just a lot, like, it feels good to have an actual podcast. I feel like we haven't had like a true good podcast since like the UVA win, because as much as it sucked for the athletes, I mean, it sucked for us too, to try and do a podcast when it literally just doesn't matter.
People didn't talk enough about how the CAA's decision impacted the podcasters.
Yeah, exactly. We should ask the sports blog guys. We should ask the Rocktown Sports Pod at the DNR. How did the CAA's decision impact you? Screw the athletes. How did it impact you as a podcaster?
And it did impact us. We had to take a month off due to, just recover mentally and physically. So obviously,
and also softball and baseball combining for like 6 wins.
They're not that bad. We'll get into that at the end. I think we'll start football because the spring game is basically in 2 days, and it's like the spring game, which is putting that in quotes because it's like 2 15-minute periods and then some scrimmaging stuff. It's not really a game.
What is this? What? It's not the spring game anymore. Is Cernetti doing the weird spring game stuff?
I think it's better than like what Withers did. I remember like my freshman year, Withers had like, they did drills on like the opposite side of the stadium where you like couldn't even get in as a student. You had like the short stands is where you would go. And they were just doing like random drills. And there was like 9 people and it was raining. And I left after like 5 minutes. I was like, why did I walk to this? But anyway. So at least they do some sort of thing. I'm a little bummed. I don't believe they're streaming it, which feels like a miss.
Does it? Were you going to tune into the spring game?
I would have watched the replay. I wouldn't have watched it live.
Yeah,
but like if they had
probably have the replay.
I don't think they're filming it though.
I mean, you'll get the highlights.
You think they're doing any video? I bet it's.
I think they have the creative team there. I think they'll have a hype video afterwards.
But that's not doesn't tell me anything. I want to watch like the actual plays. I feel like they can do
the
it.
TJ will probably
Maybe there'll be something.
record, and WHSV will have a highlight reel that's actually
all right.
But come on, you really want
I just want the above ground.
You want the all 22. You want the all 22.
Yeah,
like the NFL does.
I just didn't want to watch it like a normal broadcast. But anyway, so I feel like a little disappointed. But anyway, they got the spring game. It's going to be good weather in Harrisonburg on Saturday for people who do go. So I think that's somewhat interesting. But where do we want to start? Do we want to start with the quarterback battle? Do we want to start with the Dukes being snubbed in the FPI?
I think we start with the FBI. I mean, I did make an outline, and that is where I started.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that is the most important thing. Dukes check in at 120 in ESPN's 2022 Football Power Index. For what it's worth, in Bill Connolly's like SP plus P as in Peter, they checked in at like 90.
Yeah.
And according to JMU football fans and Coach, who's on Twitter, who does a lot of analytics stuff, the SP plus is more reliable than the Football Power Index, especially considering Football Power Index is an algorithm, and JMU has quite literally zero data at the FBS level outside of what, a game 3 years ago, a loss against.
It's weird because it's like a lot of them, and SP Plus does this too, because everyone always gets mad at Bill Connolly. It's like it's Bill Connolly's formula. It's not Bill Connolly.
But he add in a little bit of information.
He tweaks. It's all formula based for him. I think.
Okay.
I think he like can change the formula and like maybe tracks it in a way that makes way more sense and explains it. Whereas they just shove out the FPI and they're like, these are the powerful teams of football. And it doesn't make any sense. But like they don't have returning production at the FBS level other than like, unless you're counting Centeo, but I don't know how that works in the formula. So it makes sense that a new team coming up would have a crappy preseason rating, projects them to go like 3-8 or something. I think that's probably low. Like 120 is probably too low for where JMU is, but it's also not actually worth getting upset about. I was upset before because a few days before when they actually released the FPI, they didn't include JMU. So they've since added them in at 120. So at least they've now added them into the FPI, which they were not initially in. But I don't think it's much of a big deal because they just don't have data. Like you beat Middle Tennessee, which I think is maybe in the 80s week 1, and you're fine, and you're like top 100. So
yeah, it's kind of like Ken Palm where you have like one good win and it'll jump you up 30 spots. And if you lose to Norfolk State, you'll then drop to last place in the FBS most likely. So it's especially where they are. It's so dynamic. It's so volatile.
Yeah, it's super, fluid, as they like to say.
Ooh, fluid. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
They also didn't have a Sunbelt team in the top 50. So I think it's like the non-conference will kind of shake out a little bit and they'll probably pick up some nice wins and it'll change how it's viewed.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I don't know how to segue this into the QB battle.
That's a tough segue.
We're just going to run into it. So that was the Football Power Index. We're moving now into three-way. How is this a three-way quarterback battle?
I take it you're not sold on the three-way quarterback battle.
I'm not. Like it's Centeo's job, is it not?
I would think it is.
Like I get why you are like, this isn't like, I get why if you're Signetti, you're saying it's a three-way quarterback battle, but this is much like in 2019 when they said it was a three-way quarterback battle with DiNucci and Cole, and then they like threw in Gage.
Right.
And it just didn't feel like Gage really had a shot. And it seems like they're kind of doing it where they're like, all right, Billy Atkins has been the backup for a year. Like he gets the chance. And then they're like, oh yeah, early enrollee is going to get some runs with the ones. What?
I think Alonzo Barnett's very good.
Yeah. Yes. And
like, I'm excited about the future there. I would also be shocked if Todd Centeo isn't the starting quarterback for a reason other than like an injury, like if he's healthy and they bring him in and he's produced at an FBS level for multiple years, and he's like 22 or 23 or whatever he is, and you go with the 18-year-old who's like $190 and has never taken a college snap, I would be very surprised, kind of stoked too, if they think he's that good. But I don't know, like I listened to the interview and I was a Breeze reporter, Grant Johnson, actually asked a pretty good question where he was basically just saying, like, you're talking a lot about like Barnett, is it like a three-way battle? And he was like, yeah, which is what Signetti should say for a lot of different reasons, right? For Barnett, it is like, oh crap, I'm in this mix. Like, let's have a good spring, good summer and prepare and treat it like I'm gunning for the starting job. For Centeio, you can't like coast through the rest of spring and going into the summer, like, because you still have to actually earn the job in the fall camp. Same goes for like Billy Atkins, where he's trying to, battle and realizes that, hey, there's another guy battling too. So I think it makes sense to say it, and it makes sense to not name your starter. I mean, if he could just wait until week 1 and not name a starter until they start the game, which JMU coaches have done before.
Yeah.
They've tried to take it to the last second at times so that they can, maybe throw off the week 1 scouting report for their opponent. So I don't read much into this at all, because it wasn't like, oh, Centeio's really been struggling and Barnett's taken over. It's just like, yeah, this guy's good too. So we have 3 guys who are competing, and there are 3 like scholarship quarterbacks who should be competing for the job, you would think.
That's a great point. Great point. Centeio is a 6'1" graduate student playing in his 6th season at the college football level, 221 pounds. So everything, like you said, I think Centeio is the go-to guy. I think I don't know how to feel about it, because like I feel like this is a very like me thing. Centeio is the starter, and it just seems like you have to ask those questions, but at the same time, like, I want to know more about Centeio. I want to know more about, the wide receiver battle. Now that Wells is out, who's going to step up as the one, who's going to get primary targets. Like, I want to know how the defense is evolving. And like, I just feel like this is a non-starter almost.
I mean, we could talk coverage takes all day, I think, in terms of like what we're hearing from camp. Some of it is tough because they've been without a bunch of guys. Like, I think I forget who said it. I think they were working with like 8 receivers right now who are healthy or something. So kind of hard to separate there. Although I think Cignetti has left open the possibility of still adding transfers over the summer at receiver, getting a little more depth there. They don't have a lot of size at receiver. If you look, they don't have much height.
Yeah. That even Wells wasn't like a tall guy. I think he was 6'2",
something like that. Yeah.
Where you had Stapleton, who was like 6'5" in past year. Like, yeah.
I really wanted them to get the VMI guy, Jacob Harris, but he ended up going to Richmond.
Ew.
Yeah. So, but anyway, go ahead.
Here's a question though. So essentially we've penned in Todd Centeio as the starter for week 1 against Middle Tennessee. So that begs the question then, who's the backup? Do you think Billy Atkins gets maybe this is more of you're getting reps with the ones to see how you play better for when Centeio potentially goes down. No, I shouldn't say when. If Centeio goes down with an injury, like, who's more set to like take over as the one? Do you think it's Billy Atkins, who's been in the system for a year, backed up Cole, had 14 pass attempts, I think, played in 4 or 5 games last season, mostly in mop-up duty? Or do you think it's Barnett, who seemingly has this potential to be the next starter at JMU?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay,
on how the backup stands, but it's a good question. I think like that's maybe the more interesting storyline is like, I think both of those guys are really good, but JMU fans have done this before, Jack, like very recently.
I think Billy Atkins was the last case.
Billy Atkins was one of them. There's like, if Cole Johnson has any struggles, it's like, why isn't Billy Atkins a starting quarterback? And then you have people who were like, for years, were telling me that Kyle Adams was going to be the next great JMU superstar. He's now like a walk-on at Purdue. So I don't like, I'm not going to read much into these quarterback takes. I'm not one to talk given my Connor Mitch history. But like,
and our Gage Maloney history. We were calling for Gage, who then got the starting job, got COVID, couldn't start, and now is
if he didn't get COVID, he
might have. Yeah, but he's a bad quarterback at Bryant.
All right. Well, but I mean, it's just like there's a lot that's up in the air that we don't know, and there's like this love if you're a JMU fan to be like, are you telling me that Alonzo Barnett is Vad Lee? And it's like, well, no, like we're saying that he's now in a 3-way quarterback battle and still has potential to be like a backup right now. So like maybe he's a future stud.
Yeah.
But Jack, can you see a scenario where Centeio graduates, Billy Atkins and Barnett move up like a year, they have their experience, and Cignetti still brings in a transfer?
I think that every year we talk about it, and we were saying this every year with Cole Johnson. Is it Cole Johnson? Is it Gage Maloney? Or is it a transfer that will be brought in because JMU has that history? Now, going up to the FBS level, that might change a little bit, right? Because you don't have that fringe FBS guy who wants to go down to the FCS and kind of tear things up, get the restart on his career and put up good numbers like Ben DiNucci did, like Vad Lee did. Even Brian Shore was a transfer from, I think, a JUCO. So maybe you don't have that as prevalent, and you do kind of have to create your own quarterback play, your own quarterback guys. But yeah, I mean, I think every year when you're a low major team, which is what JMU is, even now that they are FBS, they're a lower tier team. Yeah, every year I'll expect transfers to come in and compete. And I think that's the thing. Cignetti's going to let them compete.
Yeah, that's kind of the takeaway, right? Is he's just letting it be an open battle. And I think too, like the flip side is like Malik Willis started at Auburn, right? And then went to Liberty and became a stud. Like maybe they get some of these P5 guys still who go and say, you know what, let me go to a good G5 in JMU and try it there. So I still think the transfer that's, I guess, why I'm trying to sort of pump the brakes on this like hype train for Billy Atkins and Alonzo Barnett. I think they're both really talented and could be special. It's also like JMU has a pretty clear recent history of adding transfers who are experienced rather than developing. Cole Johnson kind of being an exception, but he also sort of just like fell into the role. Like he had to wait a very long time.
He was a 6-year senior who didn't get his first start until his 5th year and then was benched his 5th year.
Yeah, like so it's
and if COVID doesn't happen, there's a very good like I'm not Cole Johnson had a fantastic 6th year. He had a fantastic end to his 5th year and did amazing things for JMU as a quarterback. But we can't fool ourselves. If COVID didn't happen in 2020, there's a strong possibility JMU would have brought in an FBS transfer.
Yeah, it's also like the pressure kind of ramps up at the FBS level, right? Like there's higher expectations, and it's like after this year, you're going to want to go to bowl games. You're going to really contend for the Sun Belt title and do all these things. And if you don't think like a sophomore quarterback's going to do it, you're going to bring in a transfer and like try to get someone who can do it. So I think that's really interesting, but I still think it's kind of a smokescreen where he's just saying like, hey, we want competition. I don't think it actually has changed anything. Like if Todd Centeio is not the starter, I would be very, very surprised.
If Todd Centeio isn't the week 1 starter, I will do something insane. Quick break from all of those fantastic questions for a message from our friends over at Credit Karma. Credit Karma uses your credit data to find loan offers that are personalized to you so you can have a better idea of what loan amount you can get approved for. Say you're going on a huge trip to Italy now that the world's opening back up after COVID and you need some more money. Use Credit Karma and they can get you a low interest personal loan that won't really break the bank. It can save you money while you pay off your purchase. Say you have a lot of credit card debt. Use Credit Karma to get all the money you need to pay off all those credit card debts. Say they're, at an interest rate of 20+%, and Credit Karma can get you a personal loan for under 20%. Do that and you can save money. Credit Karma will even show you your chances of approval so you can choose between loan offers that you're more likely to get approved for, and you can apply with more confidence. Comparing loan offers on Credit Karma is 100% free. So maybe if you just want to dabble a little bit, see what Credit Karma can offer you, that is free and it won't impact your credit scores. And in the end, you can end up saving money. So why not head on over to Credit Karma, check out what they can offer you and see if you can save some money. And if you're ready to apply, go to creditkarma.com/loan offers to see personalized offers. Again, that's creditkarma.com/loan offers to find the loan for you. That's creditkarma.com/loan offers. Credit Karma. Apply with more confidence today.
That leads us to the question that we had, which I think might have been tongue in cheek from Chicago Duke 1, who said, I would like to definitively know who our starting QB will be. No speculation, just straight facts. Well, we don't know. And we probably won't know until like August or early September when the first
we
game
won't
happens.
know until the Too Deep is released at the O'Neill's press conference, which honestly, I think Houston did this one year. He put for the quarterbacks.
Yeah. So like you can kind of be cheeky with it a little bit, but I think I still think it's Centeio. I think you kind of feel the same way. It's just a matter of letting them compete, and probably a good sign that the youngsters are at least good enough to stay in a competition until the fall.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot of fun. Moving into Randy W. Hunter 1. His question, what's a realistic expectation for the upcoming football season? What's the goal now that a chance for a national championship is off the table? I'll pump the brakes on that. Cincinnati made the college football playoffs. I'm just saying, what will be an acceptable win-loss record going forward against Sun Belt competition? This is kind of 3 questions, so we'll go one by one. First, what's a realistic expectation for this season? I think it's to play football. Like that.
I was literally going to say the same thing, like to show up and play 11 football games. Like I have no idea, man. They could go 3-8, 8-3, anything in between. I have no idea what the expectations are. I don't know. We don't know who the starting quarterback is. We don't know.
Yes, we do.
We don't know who the receivers outside of Wells are going to be. I think they're going to run the ball a ton.
Don't know Wells.
Sorry, outside of Thornton. Outside of Wells, outside of Thornton. See, that's the month off from the podcast. You'll get you rusty. Outside of Thornton. So like there's a lot of stuff that still has to kind of be decided. I think they're going to run the ball a ton because they have 1 billion running backs and a good offensive line, it seems like. So, but my expectation is that they're going to play football games that are like more exciting than last year.
And with no bowl game, I don't think you need expectations as a JMU football fan. Like enjoy this, enjoy the first year. There's quite literally 0 expectations, at least from our point of view, because there's no bowl games. There's no postseason anything. You're not playing for a Sun Belt title. You're literally just playing football this season. So enjoy it.
Yeah, I think like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but it's like, I'm very excited for the season. And I also don't care if they lose. Like in past seasons, I was like, that sucks when they lose. Like, I'm not going to care this year.
Now in 2 years, when they lose, I'll be pissed.
Yeah.
but I mean, they're also playing all with a complete FCS roster, like against FBS opponent. Like there's so much to this move that like this first year, it's a wash. Just enjoy it. There's no expectations. Win against Norfolk State. I guess that's the expectation. Get at least 1 win, maybe beat Texas State, Everett Withers' old stomping ground, and just a little bit of bragging rights, but that's more of a me thing. I don't think there's any expectation. So what's the goal now that a chance for a national championship's off the table, which I don't think it's off the table, but that's also a little tongue in cheek by me. But what's the goal?
Well, probably a fair point. If the Sun Belt East is the best division in the group of 5 and they do expand the playoff, which it seems like they might do, although it's kind of confusing
might when not be until 2032.
Right. And how many they expand to, but if they do expand and they don't like completely break away the Power 5, that is, then there's a chance they would be a fringe like national title contender on the outside, which is kind of what Cincinnati did. So that would be really fun and interesting. The goal, though, at the group of 5 level should always just be to win the conference, right? It's just the Sun Belt championship to me is like the goal.
No, the goal is the Bahamas Bowl. Every single year we want to go down to the Bahamas, bring out our passports. We want to go to the Bahamas Bowl.
There you go.
No, I think the goal is to compete for Sun Belt titles and get good bowl games. Like if you're not winning the Sun Belt title, like an App State or a Coastal, where you may have lost the head-to-head and you lost it by a game, and you still get a fun bowl game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Just good bowl games. That's the expectation. That's what I want.
Put yourself in contention to win the Sun Belt, and good things will tend to happen. And I think go ahead.
When you, like you said, and the Sun Belt East is actually the best group of 5 league, and you go undefeated in the Sun Belt East and you put together a solid and respectable non-conference like Cincinnati did, even when it's 4 teams, there is an outside shot you get to the college football playoffs. But that's a lot of ifs.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of things in college football, especially, really change kind of rapidly year to year and every few years in terms of like what you can do and if it's possible to get to a certain level. And like even just JMU, like, 10 years ago, they were kind of scuffling a little bit at times at the FCS level. And then they got to a point where they were a consistent national title contender. And now they're moving into one of the best G5. Like, so it's hard to necessarily expect anything at this point because they've done a lot and made a lot of progress the last decade. So I don't know. I think just kind of wait and see, and the goals will probably change year to year. But for now, it's go in, have fun in the first year, and then eventually set yourself up to contend for Sun Belt titles.
And Randy W. Hunter one's last question: what will be an acceptable win-loss record going forward against Sun Belt competition? I take this question as outside of year one. Like, what's the win-loss record looking like?
So you'd play 12 games outside of year one, typically. I think you're looking, just to me, it's like a winning record, right? So, I mean, if you're going 7-5, or better, that's probably a pretty good start, especially early on in the Sun Belt years.
And that's a bowl game.
And it's probably getting you a bowl from the Sun Belt. Yeah, especially that division. So I think that's a good goal. They're probably going to have challenging, I would think, Power 5 non-conference matchups as one of the non-conference games. Like they play UVA in 2023. So like I think they'll have those types of games that'll be really cool to win, but maybe toss up. So yeah, to me, it's just like a winning record. And then I think over time, those expectations will change probably.
I think my biggest expectation is like, and this isn't going to happen in year one, probably not even year two, maybe not even year three, but it's to keep pace with the App States and the Coastals. Like, as long as you have a similar win-loss record as them, and they maintain their spot at the top of the Sun Belt East, that's the goal. Like, whether they're losing 3 games, I would expect JMU to lose 3 to 4. Like, keep pace with the top of the Sun Belt East. Whatever that win-loss record is, that's what it is.
I think that's a really interesting way to look at it too, because if you can kind of keep pace with Appalachian State, I feel like it raises JMU's football profile nationally, because App State's pretty well respected at this point. So if you can hang in there and knock off some big squads and be competitive in the Sun Belt, yeah, that's a pretty huge step for the football program.
Moving to the next question. I'm actually looking to see if there's any more football questions. We have 2 more football questions. Yeah. Do you want to do? Oh, let's go. Signetti's contract. This is from CB Polk. Thoughts on extending Signetti's contract without seeing an FBS season first? Can I take this really quick? First?
Yeah, I was gonna have you go first.
I think JMU fans are overreacting to that. Like, you needed him in place for recruiting. Like, also contracts mean nothing. Look at Mike Houston signing a 10-year extension and then leaving after year 2. Contract extensions mean almost nothing. It's more so just like a goodwill, at least in my opinion, a goodwill gesture. And it shows recruits that, like, we're committed to this coach. And if you come in this next year or 2, he will be your coach for the next he'll be your coach for the rest of your JMU career, in theory. I think it's more so just like a way to steady the ship as they're going through one of the most not in a bad way, but in one of the most turbulent times in JMU sports history.
And I think it makes sense timing wise, because like they might literally go 4-7 next year. And I don't think that's like a Signetti, like indictment of Signetti. So then you're not extending him after a 4-7 season from optics wise.
And then he going into the last year of his contract, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Like,
I forget exactly how many years he had. I probably should have looked with the Signetti contract question, but like, yeah, like extending him for a few years made sense. He's 33-5. Like, yeah. I have no issue with him being extended given that record and what he's doing. You don't need to see an FBS season, because like he's going to get probably like 3 seasons in the FBS no matter what. Like, even if they're disastrous, he's getting like at least 2. So I think that from that point, it makes sense. It helps with recruiting, all that stuff. I also think it gives him a pay bump, which makes sense because you're trying to be competitive within the Sun Belt, which obviously pays their coaches more than the Colonial Athletic Association did.
Yes. And last football question from Troy Owens _ football stadium expansion, period. How do you think that'll go about and when? I don't think you should be expecting football stadium expansion in the next 5 years.
We've talked about it. I think you had a good point recently that was like, why don't you sell out the 25,000 consistently? And then if you decide you need 40,000, and in terms of like how it'll go, it would just be building up the shorter side.
It'd be renovating Godwin,
yeah,
completely, adding in that and just making it a bowl, and then keeping the Anderson Plecker Center the same. So it would just raise it up. But yeah, I mean, they have 1 sellout a year and it's homecoming.
You don't like go win some Sunbelt games. And if you're consistently packing the 25,000, it seems like season ticket sales are getting pretty excited this year with the FBS move. Then you decide you need 40,000, do it. But you don't just build to build, because a 25,000 that is like packed and is like has people really wanting to get in is better than like 40,000 if you've got like 10,000 empty seats.
And I also think I don't have the numbers in front of me. 25,000 is one of the larger Sunbelt stadiums.
I think it's pretty competitive. Yeah.
So there's no need to go 40,000. There's no need to add that second side.
Yeah. I think they're probably fine right now.
I think this might be a little controversial and a little rude to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think JMU fans just want the larger stadium as like like a confidence thing, like feeling like they're the little brother to Virginia Tech and UVA. And JMU fans are like, well, we need to compete with Lane Stadium. No, we don't.
It's like at this point, just I think take baby steps in certain areas. And yeah, the 25,000 is reasonably competitive. It's kind of toward the lower end, but there's not a huge like difference. Like Appalachian State, it looks like it's 30,000. The highest, I think Louisiana goes to 41, but no one else goes over 31. So it's like at 25, you're right within the Sun Belt. If you go to 40, you'd be like way the top of the Sun Belt. So maybe just wait on it, because I don't think it's necessary right now.
Yeah, sell it out consistently, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Okay, JMU Tripster. Will the move to the Sun Belt help recruiting for baseball and softball? Baseball will need a boost to keep up with some of the high-powered SBC teams, in my view. I think we're discounting what the CAA baseball is. Like, CAA baseball is not a terrible conference.
It's bad this year.
Oh, it is.
But it's not, or worse this year. But it has been respectable-ish in the past. But the Sun Belt's definitely better.
Yeah, but
in both.
Yeah.
But it goes both ways. It's like, I think it probably boosts recruiting because they have a better chance of making the NCAA tournament. But at the same time, if you're like the 8th best team in the conference, does that make somebody want to play for you instead of like if the conference is sending teams to the tournament, but you're not the team going to the tournament? I don't know that necessarily helps recruiting drastically. So like softball, I think it'll help.
Yeah.
Baseball's a kind of like an inflection point, which we can talk about now or later, depending on.
Let's move into it right now.
Okay. So the question, and I'm kind of shocked this has not gotten more play from literally anyone.
We've been talking about this. I've, not to boost my own horn or anything, but I guess I shouldn't toot my own horn on calling for a person to get fired. But I feel like I've been on this Eikenberry, is he good train for a really long time.
You know who else has been on that train for a really long time?
Who?
Jeff Bourne. The man gives him like a 1-year extension, like, show me what you got every year. And at a certain point, you either need to like commit to him for multiple years or you need to move on. He keeps giving him these like 1-year COVID years, which I think is basically what it is, where it's like, oh, COVID made last year weird. But he did it last year too, where he gives him a 1-year extension that takes him through June of 2022 now. And his quote was basically, we look forward to significant improvement in on-field success next year. They're 20-17 right now. Barring a miracle, they're not making the NCAA tournament. Now they would have been a legitimate contender to win the CAA tournament. So they're getting a little screwed there. I'll give them that. But they're like, he has not been bad any year. Like Marlon Eikenberry has not had JMU be a bad team.
But they haven't been good.
They're just really, really average. And the thing that so he had coached VMI previously, and they were really, really bad when he took over. And they had 6 winning seasons during his tenure there, which is like the saying that they had in 40 plus years or whatever before he had gotten there. I think he was there for about 10 years, 11 years, something like that. So decent, right? He improved. And then JMU's been average. He's been a head coach, pretty much every year. He had 1 year off, but pretty much every year since 2004, he's never taken a team to the NCAA tournament or a regional. He's been head coach for almost 2 decades. And he's never taken a team to a regional. He's 3-15 in conference tournaments as a head coach. So there are a lot of reasons to not bring him back. I think there are probably some, like they're improving a little bit. The Sun Belt can be a recruiting boost. They play good offense. They're not terrible. But if you really want to commit to baseball in the Sun Belt and being a really competitive baseball team in an area that cares about baseball, the guy that you're stringing along with 1-year deals, hoping there's going to be some change when there constantly isn't, does not seem like the plan.
I'm just going to read you off his records. Since taking over, he was named head coach in the summer of 2015. So 2016 was his first year. 24-31, 24-27, 28, 26-26, 31-26, 10-6 in the COVID shortened season, 11-17 last year, which was also a shortened season due to COVID. Mm-hmm. And now this season. So they're aggressively average. That is one of the most aggressively average teams. And Jimmy Jackson's been doing a phenomenal job with the pitchers. They've put in 3 to 5 arms into not into the majors, but into minor league organizations where they've done well. Big Country, Nick Robertson, Robeson, Nick Robertson.
Yeah.
Was a fantastic closer, was trending towards hitting triple digits on the radar gun. Sent him to the Dodgers organization. You had Nick Stewart is in the Orioles organization. I'm missing a few others. Colton Harlow back in like 2015. I think that was actually before the Eikenberry tenure. Maybe he had 1 year under Eikenberry, but he was in the Rockies organization. There's another pitcher in the Orioles organization. And then this year you have Chase DeLauder, which I know is out for a few weeks due to a broken foot. But then you also have Trey Dabney, who was like CAA all rookie team and one of the leaders for rookie of the year in the CAA when his first season came around. And like, you have the talent and you're just not producing wins. It feels almost like basketball, huh?
They can never like put it together at the same times, like ever. And I think that's what's frustrating. Like, they lead the CAA in home runs this year. They're second in batting average. Like, their lineup's sweet, but they're 7th out of 9 teams in ERA. And like in years past, like you were saying, they've had like the arms and the bats can't do anything.
Sheldon Perkins. Sorry. He's the other pitcher that's in the, and he's had a solid time at the Orioles organization. Go ahead.
So
Sorry about
it's
that.
like they've had like something works, but they never like piece it all together at the same time. And I don't know, like Chase DeLauder is like a pretty good MLB prospect who's playing really well. I know he's missed some games with like weird injuries and stuff. But at the same time, like, you're 20-17 with like one of the best players you've ever had. I don't know, like, why would playing harder teams help them? Like, there's this idea that like when you join the Sun Belt, you get better because you're playing better competitions. Like, or they might just get thrashed.
I think if there's ever a time to hit the reset button on this team, it's at the conclusion of this season. Let Eikenberry go. Hit the refresh button. If players transfer, they transfer. You're already losing DeLauder to the draft. Like, this is the time to hit the hard reset and then go into the Sun Belt with a fresh slate and see where you can go from there. Also worth mentioning that these players go to like the Valley Baseball League and Cape Cod League and perform well. Like, Reef Snyder went to the Turks in Harrisonburg and like had a fantastic summer, if I'm not mistaken. And the Valley Baseball League, while it's not the premier summer league, they're getting a lot of young, potential great players coming through there. Same with the Cape Cod League is the premier summer baseball league, and they produce. And then they come to JMU and they don't.
It's just a little frustrating. Like, this year, they're not even bad. Like, so if Bourne wants to keep Eikenberry, like, they played the best team in the country, in my opinion, is Tennessee. I think they're like the top of most metrics. And they took them to extra innings on the road in early March and almost won that game. They lost the next one kind of handily, but they almost won that game. They had a chance to win it. They beat a Virginia Tech team that's like in the top 10 right now with a really good performance. They almost beat Maryland, probably should have beat Maryland, which is a top 25 team very recently. They've won, I think they played 4 CAA series. They've won 3 of 4. Here's the thing. I think those 3 that they won the first 2 in each, couldn't complete the sweep. And the one series they lost, they got swept. So it's like, it's little things like that where it's like, God, just a game here, a game there, and you're a completely different RPI or a completely different team. And it's been the same way for year after year after year. So if you're Bourne and you say, you know what, I see enough that I think Eikenberry is the guy, then extend him for like 3 years and just commit to it. Give him 3 years in the Sun Belt with recruiting, all that, see what happens. If you don't, which is kind of my understanding, given the tiny little baby extensions he's giving him, then yeah, after this year, they're not going to make the NCAA tournament unless they like win out. Just find someone who you think can make this team competitive in the Sun Belt, because baseball is one that matters to the Sun Belt.
It matters to the Valley.
Just get better at baseball. It's not that hard.
It's like, and what you were saying about they were 1 game away from completing the sweep. They lost game 1 against Quinnipiac, and then they were swept against Morehead State. Morehead State 16-19. Quinnipiac is not a good school. They lost game 1 at Winthrop and then proceeded to have to go to extras to beat Winthrop. Like, they had to go to extras to beat Longwood. Yet you're telling me you could take Tennessee to extras? and nearly beat them?
Some of it's college baseball is like weird, and like the
Yeah.
record's never going to be like
And
amazing.
it depends on who's starting for tennis, like who
Sure.
started on a Tuesday game for Tennessee. Probably
But
not their ace.
But it's also like at some point, if you've had 6 years and your team never reaches its full potential, then yeah, you get to really nitpick these games in, whatever year it is now for him. So, I mean, I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a decent coach. It's just a matter of like, if you really want to contend in the Sun Belt and you really want to build up all of your different athletic programs, like go do it and like hire someone you think could do it. If it's Eikenberry, you got to stop with the 1-year extension nonsense and give him multiple years. And if it's not, then yeah, like let's just figure it out and go grab somebody if you're born.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I mean, nothing against Eikenberry, great guy. Jimmy Jackson, fantastic pitching coach. All like the coaching staff is good. They just aren't great. And I don't know if they're the ones to take them into the Sun Belt. Also, just one more time before we get off this topic. What was his conference record again?
This year or every year?
Every year combined. 3-15?
Who is this? Ike?
Sorry, not conference record. Conference tournament.
Oh, conference tournament. Yes, conference tournament 3-15. And then the CAA, he's 48-63 going into this year, where they're 6-6. So he's 15 games below 500 in that. Then historically at VMI and JMU, he's 3-15 in conference tournament games. So it's like
not an indictment of success.
I don't think you've seen enough to like actually think he's the guy. But if you have, like, again, if you have
call into the podcast right now. Let us know what you've seen.
But also just like then like trust him. Like if you think that he has it and you still believe in him, if you're born, like just then give him like 3 years.
Yeah. Also at G_Lamb4. This was his question talking. What are your thoughts on the job that Coach Eikenberry has done? He did add in my opinion, pitching still needs to increase talent and consistency, but seems like a solid core of young position players. That's just this season. They've typically had one of the best bullpens and one of the best starting rotations in the CA. Like they've put a lot of arms into the majors. Like pitching was very talented. Jimmy Jackson's done a great job with the pitching staff. They're just younger now. Showalter's all right.
Changes every year, right? Where it's like, oh, the hitting's good or the pitching's good, but they haven't really pieced them together and found ways to win games. And I think that's kind of how you get judged fairly or unfairly, is just like the wins and the losses. So I also think going into the Sun Belt, pretty good facilities, athletic department that spends a bunch and cares about sports, would not be that hard to recruit a baseball coach if that's the decision Jeff Borden decides to make.
And yeah, they host the CAA tournament every year because they have the best facility. And going into the Sun Belt, they probably still have one of the best facilities because the Valley League has their all-star game there. Like it's because Harrisonburg's the central point for the Valley Baseball League, but it's also because they have the nicest facilities. Right. Like there's just so much to it. All right.
And I feel like a little spoiled as a fan sometimes where I'm like, I want JMU to be good at every sport, but like, I kind of really want them to lean into the Sun Belt thing, which to me is football, baseball, softball are like things that the Sun Belt seems to really care about,
and win basketball every year.
I mean, I want them to win basketball. I just don't think the Sun Belt necessarily is like a basketball focused type of schools, but that's one that's like that and like women's lacrosse. And the other one's like JMU can be the best athletic department in the Sun Belt, but you can't like whiff on baseball to do that.
Yeah. And they've whiffed on baseball since 2015. One more quick break. This time it's a message from our friends over at Athletic Greens. Tons of people take multivitamins, but it's important to choose one that's top quality. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to start your day right. Don't even know what an adaptogen is, but I think it's good for you if it's in Athletic Greens. Their special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, nervous system, immune system, helps your energy, helps recovery, helps focus and aging. It's also lifestyle friendly and fits a wide range of diets. There's only 1 gram of sugar, no chemicals, no artificial anything. So reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/believe. That's athleticgreens.com/BLEAV. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Athletic Greens, take ownership of your health. And let's get back to the podcast. Peter Mooney 09. Can we do a sport by sport breakdown on if the move to the Sun Belt or other new conference is an upgrade, neutral, or downgrade compared to the CAA?
We've definitely done something like this before. So I think we'll do a quick one, and then it makes maybe more sense to do a longer form like article on it, maybe.
Yeah.
Which maybe I'll sign myself up for that.
Maybe
But
we can split the difference and like do half. If it's too long, I love it when we plan articles on the podcast.
I'll roll through the names here and you just tell me your initial thought. All right. We'll do the men's sports first.
Perfect.
Baseball.
Upgrade.
Agreed. Basketball.
Neutral.
I would agree.
Slight downgrade, maybe.
It's pretty similar. Football.
Upgrade, big time.
I would say so. Golf.
NA. I don't know.
I think I want to say they're like slight upgrades just because you have more teams in the South that have like the ability to play year round. So I think they're slightly more competitive, if I'm not mistaken. Like any league with Coastal Carolina in golf feels like it's improvement. So soccer, men's soccer.
That new Sun Belt conference is freaking amazing.
Yeah, so that's
a huge upgrade.
That's like one of the 2 or 3 best conferences maybe in the country. Tennis, I don't know a ton on that.
Incomplete. I don't know enough.
I would guess maybe a slight improvement, just some of the weather again there. But
I would guess for the those types of sports, Sun Belt is, if anything, an upgrade.
Yeah.
Because the Southern teams typically have better tennis and golf programs.
Yeah. Women's basketball.
Neutral.
I think that's pretty neutral as well. Yeah. They did. I don't know if we'll get into this much later. They did take a prominent assistant coach from Troy, little coaching staff shakeup for Coach O and the Dukes, which I think is interesting to track. He's trying to really improve and have someone bring some new ideas. I think it's Neil Harrow. Yeah, is coming in there. So excited about that addition because he has been in the Sun Belt for like 7 years. So I imagine has some recruiting relationships as well. Cross country.
I have no earthly clue.
I'm not even going to pretend to know. Field hockey.
I would say probably a downgrade actually, because Delaware is a national champion and like the CA had a pretty solid field hockey.
They don't have a league yet because they don't have.
They didn't. I thought they went Big East.
They went independent for a year. I don't think they've actually announced. So I would say probably a downgrade right now because they don't have they got kind of screwed on this, at least currently. Like the independent is not great because you don't have an automatic berth to the really tiny field of the NCAA tournament. So field hockey currently is in a tough spot. Women's golf, I think, is an improvement.
Sure.
Lacrosse.
Ask Tommy Baker, man.
He seemed pretty excited about the Sun Belt when we talked.
Okay, so then we'll upgrade.
Lacrosse to the American Athletic Conference.
Fantastic upgrade.
Just getting Florida in the league alone is like constantly a top 10 team, so that's a good one. Women's soccer.
Are they moving in with the men's? Is it the same?
I don't
conference?
think it's the same like built thing. I think they might have already had women's soccer.
Okay.
So I don't really know the difference there, to be honest with you, but probably pretty neutral. Softball.
Upgrade.
Yeah. Swim and dive, I don't think is yet to announce a new league. So I think that one would be currently a downgrade if they're seeking a conference.
Yeah, agreed.
Kind of a tough spot for them to be in right now. Women's tennis, I don't know.
I'm going to say upgrade based off the same logic we used for men's tennis.
And then last two, track and field.
No idea. And I'm
no
not
earthly clue. And then volleyball, I have not looked at Sunbelt volleyball much. So I really don't know on that.
But I don't really know either.
I can't imagine, like the CAA wasn't like sending like 5 teams into the thing. So I can't imagine it's drastically different.
I would say neutral.
Yeah.
If anything, a slight downgrade, maybe, because the CAA would have like the second place team be on the bubble and then would make like a random other postseason volleyball tournament.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty massive benefit to like most of the. I don't think anyone's like, oh wow, that's a downgrade.
Yeah, and I also would say, from an economics perspective, from a revenue sport perspective,
Yeah,
this is massive, 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 and it turns baseball and softball. Not saying they're going to turn it around so much that they become like these huge cash cows, because that's just not how it works. But like, it adds, the Valley cares about baseball and softball more than it does basketball. And it puts new life into baseball and softball. It brings basketball where it can become actually a consistent winner of the Sun Belt and a consistent berth in the NCAA tournament. Because at JMU's level, you don't want to go to the Big East. You don't want to go to the American and flounder. You want to go to another mid-major conference where you have the ability to win. And that's what the Sun Belt is. And they are postseason eligible next year. So they're right back into it. So overall, for the revenue sports, this is fantastic. For sports that the Valley cares about, this is fantastic. For field hockey, that grades NA because we don't know where they're going to go. Swim and dive, that grades an NA because we don't know where they're going to go. But overall, this is a great upgrade.
it feels like it just raises the ceiling a lot, right?
It raises the bar.
Yeah, where like you can like
You didn't get my
baseball. I
joke.
feel like do they use that as a slogan?
Yeah, they
Oh,
did
God.
that for like 2 seasons ago.
totally
Like on
blocked
all
that
their
out. That's
graphics, it was raise the bar or something like
That's
that.
so annoying. But it really, I feel like the ceiling's a lot higher, and like baseball can become like this, maybe a bigger thing. Softball can even grow more. All of them, I just like football can grow. Everything can kind of grow in the Sun Belt. So I think that's something the CAA was not helping with. There was a follow-up to this that was asking about like
average attendance. I was about to ask some context on this is from the Sidelines JMU account. Context on the average attendance for higher profile sports in the Sun Belt. I think that'll be included in our longer form article that
I think that's
And we talked about a little bit with football. They're near kind of the bottom of in terms of capacity, but I think for most of the sports, they are pretty average in terms of average attendance, despite being a little bit lower in capacity.
Yeah. So I think that'll be one that takes more time than a podcast to actually dive into.
Yeah. Awesome. So that's all the questions we had. I'm not sure what time we're at running, because I forgot to hit my stopwatch. Talked a little, we already went baseball, Fire Ike ? General assessment of the season. We did all of that. Lacrosse, we can talk a little softball here. We didn't talk much softball. So we'll go softball, lacrosse, and then we'll hit with some quick basketball things. So softball, a little bit of a disappointing season, but if you had listened to the JMU Sports News podcast preseason, you would have known that this was coming.
I kind of thought, like making the NCAAs would be like a really good season for him. I listened to an interview with Lauren Laporte the other day, and she was like pretty harsh, I thought, on like their team, where she was kind of roasting them a little bit, not like individuals or anything like that, but she was talking about how they played like a kind of a bad, I think it was College of Charleston team, and they lost the first game of the series and smoked them in the last two. And she's like, I have no idea why we would go like into a Friday game without any energy or any like emotion or anything. So we talked to him for a long time. It sounds like she's been a little bit frustrated with some of the freshmen in terms of, I don't want to say their readiness to play, but just maybe like how they're adjusting. And I think that she knows it's a learning curve and taking time. I think the one thing that's interesting is there's like JMU fans have this idea that like, well, they'll figure it out. Like they're going to all become stars. And it's like, well, the competition is going to increase in the Sun Belt and they'll play a tough non-conference. You can't just count on the freshmen becoming stars, because they've had freshmen before who like looked the part of stars and then continued to develop.
Making good. Odyssey Alexander.
Yeah. They like Odyssey Alexander didn't show up as a freshman and like do nothing and then become a star. Like she was pretty evident early that she was good. Like Megan Good was going toe to toe with LSU in a super regional as a freshman. So I think that's what's interesting is for me is how do they move forward with recruiting? They probably need to add an arm, I would think, through the portal, unless they have someone coming in recruiting that I think maybe they're excited about, because they flipped a Georgia commit, but I think the Georgia commit was in the class of 2023. So I want to say she wouldn't actually be at JMU until 2024. So that might be 2 seasons from now. So something to keep an eye on there. But I think pitching, they probably need to add some stuff. And then the big thing is going to be some of the decisions of the upperclassmen, like Hannah Shiflett's a redshirt junior who was non-committal in an interview with Dave Riggert about coming back for another season. She could also potentially transfer if she wanted to.
Sarah
So
Jubis.
yeah, so we'll see what happens there in terms of whether she comes back. She's hitting 400. She's the only player on the team with double-digit home runs, and she has 14. So like, it would be cool if she came back. She's really good. I think they would benefit from that. But then like Jasmine Hall as a freshman has been good. There's some players who have talent, and I think they'll be better next year.
Yeah.
But they still need to make significant strides in terms of development, and then maybe even adding some players, recruiting and portal. They've got room to grow, because I don't think it's just like, oh, they rebuild and then next year they're great again. Like they got some building still left to do.
Yeah, 100%.
So we'll see what happens. They only have like 12 games left. So they got that going for them. The other thing that's interesting is Virginia Tech's like a top 5 team, and UVA is like very competent now. So the recruiting is going to be harder. Liberty's always been good, but now you've got like multiple in-state programs that are really, really good. So I think maybe gone are the days of finding every unheralded gem when you've got so many teams that are going to be recruiting Virginia looking for stars. So
yeah, you might not be getting a Megan Good again or an Odyssey Alexander again.
Yeah, it's like maybe
at least
someone
easily.
I think they might pick up a little bit on it more, especially after seeing what JMU's done. Those in-state teams are probably going to give pretty thorough looks at
volleyball players.
Those players. Yeah. So they
take
any volleyball player you can. Exactly. So that'll be interesting. And lacrosse looks like they could make some noise in May.
Yeah. If you haven't been following along with the lacrosse season, you're probably, I wouldn't say shocked, but they put on this 3-game winning streak in mid-March, taking down number 19 Richmond, number 14 Virginia, number 3 Maryland, and then going to, hosting Towson and winning that game as well. So a nice little 4-game winning streak, because Towson's typically, not always a ranked team, but a solid RPI. And I might be making a liar out of myself by saying that, and they might be having a terrible season.
I think they're not as good this year, but they're
perfect.
Historically pretty solid.
But a solid couple of wins that really catapulted them up the standings, catapulted them into the at-large conversation. And here they are sitting at, what are they? 11-4, 4-0 in conference, but that doesn't really matter. Better away record than they have home record. But with all that being said, are they going to make the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I would be very shocked if they didn't at this point. RPI is like 10th nationally. Games against Delaware and Drexel, they should win both of those. But even if maybe it'll drop one somehow, I still think they're in a lock to get in. I think they might be able to potentially host early if they win the next 2 and win out with a 10-game winning streak. The win over Maryland is huge.
Huge. First time they've ever won in College Park.
And the ones over Richmond and Virginia hold some pretty good weight too. And there's even a couple others. Like I think UConn's come on pretty strong since they beat them in February.
UConn was 23rd when they won. They also beat Ohio State 15-4. Ohio State's not a great team, but a better RPI than what they're doing to CAA teams.
Yeah. So they've got a good resume. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And maybe more excitingly, they're just playing really well. And they look like a team that could win some games. So nice to see one of the teams in the spring, have a chance to play in the postseason.
Yeah. JMU currently 10th in the standings. UConn is 14th. So yeah. UConn has stormed up the polls. UConn is 11-2 overall. One of those losses being to JMU. So big time stuff.
Maryland is their only loss to
Maryland's
JMU
5th right now. Only loss was to JMU. They're 7-0 on the road, 6-1 at home. In case you care about road and home splits.
That's a big time dub.
That's what you would call a quadrant 1 win if we were in basketball.
Exactly right. And speaking of basketball, Jack, women's basketball, excited to see what happens. I think they still have one coaching job that they're trying to fill.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
And Jack will do it.
I'll do it.
Shauna Reagan, if you're listening, Jack will be your assistant coach to bring new ideas, which might just be like slow down.
No, my idea would be pass the ball, and then we're going to play 2K during practice. And that's how we're going to get all of our game film done.
That's actually pretty smart.
Thank you.
And men's team was kind of in the mix for some recruits and transfers that didn't quite turn out the way they had hoped. So they're still looking. I think they have like 4 open roster spots or something.
Who has transferred out?
All 3 of the freshmen and Jalen Hodge. So they lost Devin Savage, Jalen Stinson, Andrew McConnell, Jalen Hodge, Charles Fallen graduated. So looking to add some size and some beef. I think they still need a big guy. If they could get one and mix for some of them, So we'll see what happens there. I also think they could use a shooter because Fulton and Hodge were two of your best 3-point shooters.
Yes, I think what you should be targeting is someone who is large enough to play the 5, so you don't have to stick Amadi there anymore. And shooters, please, because you have slashers covered.
Yes.
You got Molson, you got Amadi, you got Wooden. Although Wooden can spot up and take a couple longer shots, not necessarily threes. He's more of a mid-range guy, but you have your mid-range covered. You have inside, you have the mid-range. Get me 2 shooters, get me a 6'9", 225 guy. I'm not asking for a lot.
It's also kind of interesting to look at like Byington's comments because he's talked to Shane Metlin of the DNR a few times. And he talked about how he wanted guys who were like 230, 240 in the post, like more size, not necessarily height. But I think he's bringing in, or at least there's been some rumors about him, having these leaders forwards transfer in who weigh like $190. So I don't know what he's saying and what he actually means, but we need some guys who can rebound and maybe block some shots and then shoot threes. If there's a 7-footer out there who's like 260 and moves like LeBron and shoots like Steph Curry or like a Kevin Durant type, that would be big.
That would be huge.
Also, can you imagine Kevin Durant at his current peak right now playing in the Sun Belt? He would be a weapon.
I had a point. Where was I going with this? Oh man.
What do you think about the size thing where he's just trying to get big boys instead of height?
I think it's stupid.
You don't like it.
No, here's what I was going to say. It worries me how much he talks about the freshman that's coming in that's playing like a 4-5, like, and that how he's like, I expect him to contribute right away. That scares me that he thinks that this high schooler right now can come in and play in the Sun Belt, not a great conference, but can play in the Sun Belt. And I'm worried that in his mind, he's like, we don't have to target any transfers. We're fine. We have a freshman. He worries the mess out of me.
I was also interested. Is like he's talking about guys being 240. Like, does he expect Sule and Amadi to gain like 20 pounds? We're going to see like just a bulked up Amadi. That'd be kind of scary if he kept the explosiveness, but I don't know like what he's
Shaq-esque gripping down the hoop
from like weight. It's going to be interesting to see how he puts the roster together. Cause to me, that's really the only thing they haven't done that well.
They also, like with the current roster makeup, could play a solid small ball lineup with Sule at the 5 or even Wooden at the 5, because Wooden's your tallest player at 6'8", which I think is giving him a few inches. But the thing is you can't play small ball with all slashing guards. And
that
forwards.
Lineup would shoot like 20%.
Yeah, like you would need to have like 2 Chucks
right
shooting, and then you could have Takal at the 3, and then Wooden at the 4, and Amadi at the 5, and then Sule off the bench. Like that would be your small ball lineup, and Wooden would need to shoot well. But you're sitting here now with 0 shooters on your team, no height, and you want to play a small ball lineup that's going to focus on Takal Molson, who's like a 25% 3-point shooter. This isn't going to work, Byington. I'm no coach, and I'm not saying I'm a good coach because I've never coached basketball in my life, nor have I ever played it at an organized level more than Parks and Rec. So I don't know a lot, but I know one thing in basketball is you need size, and we don't have that.
Shooting is huge, right? So if they get some shooting,
I'd rather have size than shooting at this point, though, because then you could play a larger lineup and get away with having to call at the 3 or 2, which isn't his natural position. That'd be a huge lineup if he's at the 2. But like, I would prefer size than I would shooting right now.
I think that's actually a fair point, because if they get some size and you could have a defensive lineup that isn't horrible defending the 2 and maybe block shots, your defensive metrics go way up, and you still have the guards who create steals, then it's like, all right, at least we have a base on defense that's good, and then we can kind of piece it together. Because like
Votto could go off for 60% from 3 in one game, so like you have shooting there.
He's 50%. A huge, he really helps because he can fill it up, and then you've got like Iheanacho and Edwards that are like capable of doing things offensively. It's just like not necessarily from the 3-point line, so that's where probably need at least one guy who can shoot it. Although I do think and maybe they're putting a lot of pressure, Jarrell Roberson, that incoming freshman, is like 6'9". He can block shots, and he actually shoots the 3 really well.
How much weight does he have on him? 120?
He's probably around 200 pounds. So he's a little lengthier. then maybe you're looking for. But he's one that adds some interesting stuff there. And Wooden at the end of the year was shooting the three pretty well. So maybe you get something there. But they
only took him 50 games to warm up.
It would be nice to have a guy.
So rude to Wooden. I'm so sorry.
It would be nice to have a guy like Falden who was just so consistent from three. So if they get a 3-point shooter a little size, they got 4 spots open.
And also, like, I don't want to see guys playing out of position anymore. Like, Wooden shouldn't be asked to shoot 4 threes a game, maybe 1 or 2, and then keep them working inside. Like, I don't want to see Amadi at the 5. He's an explosive 4.
I agree with you. Like, I think they need a guy who can handle that down low. If they can do that, that'd be awesome.
Mark Byington, as great as a mid-major coach as he is, he's not Hubert Davis. They can't be running UNC's positionless basketball because they don't have a Brady Manick and an Armando Bacot.
Right. They got to add something that is like, oh, wow, this guy's a dynamic force, because they have a couple guys at the guard spot who are really good. It's like, if you could add some size and maybe one dude who can shoot. The issue with Jalen Hodge when he was on the team is that I don't think they trusted him necessarily in their defensive scheme as much. So his minutes got limited. Like, he never struggled shooting the ball. The guy could shoot.
Who is it? Jalen Hodge?
Hodge. Yeah. It was just a matter of, like, I think they liked the other guys more on defense, which is why he didn't play as much at the end of the season. But if you can get someone who can go in kind of like a fall and shoot the ball, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens, because I think you have to be in the portal by May 1st. And then I don't know what the deadline is to get the guys, but I imagine he's going to start wanting to get his roster figured out here soon.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Because you can contend for Sun Belt titles right away. Like right away.
Maybe it's both because we just love college basketball, but like, that's one that I want the men's and the women's team. Like, come on, like, you should be dominating that league.
So, okay. Yeah. All right. Anything else you need to add? Any plugs, anything like that?
Yeah, that's it. We got the spring game on Saturday. So I guess we'll see what the takeaways are there, but I think football is going to ramp up more when we get actually into fall camp and people are healthy.
We probably should have a podcast next week early breaking down the spring game. So we'll have a podcast next week discussing the spring game, talking about the quarterback battle. So if you have any questions post spring game, get them into us. We'll probably record Monday or Tuesday earlier next week. So the spring game's still fresh in our mind, despite not being able to watch it. And Bennett is all torn up about that. He really wanted to get the all 22 view of 15-minute halves and then scrimmaging drills. So for Bennett Conlon, my name is Jack Fitzpatrick. Thank you so much for tuning in to the JMU Sports News Podcast. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Talk to you next week. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.